Hey everybody, this is Joe. Thank you for watching my Giga Texas construction update video.
Well, welcome to another Friday. It's the 7th of October, 2022. A lot of activity going on today. We start off with a beautiful sunrise over the factory from the west looking to the east. And you'll see that at the beginning of the video, so make sure you check that out. For today, we're going to talk a little bit about what we saw in the previous video with the Berm lights and compare what we see with the official rendering that we got from Tesla at Cyber Rodeo to kind of get an idea of what's in store.
On my previous video, I showed you this view of the North Berm lit up in this very interesting pattern. And I got to thinking that it may be a good opportunity for me to review an official rendering we got from Tesla to show you what is planned in the future. And as you can see by this rendering from the south end, there's quite a few more lighted sections and details that we can discuss. Now remember, going over this just after Cyber Rodeo, and a lot of viewers question whether or not the Cyber Berms would actually be lit, as you can see in this rendering. And what I showed you in my previous video is the answer is absolutely. Now in this render, you can see in the upper left-hand corner, the arrow is pointing to the image that I took on my previous video. The other three arrows on the south end show you what we can expect with new Cyber Berms to be constructed over the coming weeks and months. Another interesting detail I'd like to point out is, as you can see, the Cyber Pond on the south end is also ringed with lights. In the lower left-hand corner, you see a photo of how that appears today while construction is still underway. But this will add quite a bit to the visual appeal to the south end, particularly at night. Another interesting detail is on the roof of the main factory. As you can see by the two arrows, the large Tesla spelled out using solar panels is envisioned to have those letters lit up as well with very similar lights to what we see on the Cyber Berms. Also, just note the entire roof covered with solar panels as well. So about 70,000 total solar panels will be used per Tesla, and we are about 1/4 of the way to that point now. Another interesting detail in this rendering is the South Perimeter Road, and not only is it south of the pond, but also, as you can see by the upper arrow, it continues all the way around the west side, kind of trailing around where the Colorado River is, up to the location where we've talked about where a boring tunnel may be constructed. And some people have questioned whether this would actually happen, but you can see in the bottom left-hand corner photo that there is work in this general area for what looks like this perimeter road. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that this rendering came from Cyber Rodeo in April, and Tesla is well known of making plan changes here at Giga Texas, so not everything may be exactly as shown in this render. There are some changes that I'd like to highlight. In this image, you can see the rendering does not show the expanded window line on the southeast corner of stamping, nor does it show the large doors that go into the stamping extension section of the building. And these were added after the rendering was made. And here is apparently another change from the rendering, as you can see with the arrow and the dotted yellow line. At the time, the rendering envisioned the concrete lot on the south end where we see the Model Ys parked, and we've seen the transportation trucks pick up the Model Ys. However, as you can see in the bottom left-hand corner photo, some kind of major change has happened. They are excavating the entire concrete section and they're preparing for some sort of construction. And nearby, there's material storage with a lot of steel. So these may be related, and ultimately we may see a change in this particular rendering, and I'm looking forward to finding out what that may be. So we've covered some of the interesting details in this rendering and where some changes may be taking place. But there are also several other Easter eggs within this image that I did not cover. And I'm kind of curious, can you find them? Let me know in the comments of the video.
Well, I hope you found that review about the Cyber Berm lights, the official rendering, and what we might be able to expect to see here at Giga Texas in the near future interesting. I think if it's all completed pretty much like the rendering, or even mostly like the rendering, it's going to be very beautiful to see at night. There's a lot more to see in the video today. Activity on the south end, the east side, the battery cathode, and particularly up at the electrical substation. So make sure you take a look at the entire video. A lot of information is in that video as well. Again, thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a great weekend and take care.
My drones are ready and raring to go. Let's go flying over Giga Texas. I hope you enjoyed that extended view of the sunrise over Giga Texas and being able to see the entire factory with that sunrise. Now let's turn our attention to the west side material storage, and let's see what's going on over here this morning. On this end, you can see quite a bit of containers. These house materials and other equipment that is used throughout the construction around the main site. You can also see quite a bit of steel components, some tanks, some workshops off to the left-hand side, some of the red scaffolding just going underneath the drone. Here's some of the purple irrigation pipe and actually some more plants waiting to be delivered around the site for installation. On the left-hand side, you see many of these tanks. Now we see some of those white ones have already been moved to the battery cathode plant, so I expect to see those tanks installed as well. Continuing to move towards the south, I will reposition just to show you the continued earthwork and excavation work going on to shape the water management system on the south side of River Road. And River Road is the road that we're just passing over. This was built by Tesla that connects Highway 973 on the far west to the main factory just under the bridge under the drone that we're flying right now. But you can see that there is activity on this clearing and the water management section of the south side of the road. And this view gives you an overall image of the location of the material storage and the main factory. We rejoined the main construction site and we're flying over the Colorado River right now, and I'm going to turn the drone back towards the north so you can get an image of the south end of the main building itself, and also some new activity on the horizontal drilling site that recently had 3 of the very large treated water pipes drilled, bored, and pulled underneath the Colorado River. What you see here is a very large excavation going on in the center of this site, and it looks like it's possible that the pipe may be doing a 90-degree bend. You can see a section of the pipe just next to that excavator inside of the pit. This, if is true, then this means that we may see some of this pipe heading off towards the west rather than the north. The big box-like structure on the right-hand side of the screen, those are trench boxes, and those are put into excavations to help protect from cave-ins for the workers. As we fly on the southeast side of the stamping machine structure, you see this section with all of the steel components. This has been moved over from the south side of the pond, and we'll see in a second how that material storage on the south end of the pond is being cleared out. But what I want to show you here is these long lines with the sort of the dust shows where more saw cutting of this concrete ramp has taken place. In my previous video, we saw the red markings of where the saw cuts were going to be. Now the saw cuts have been completed. And what they're going to do is section these concrete sections, slabs out, and they'll be excavating them out and then moving them in sort of squares. And I think they've decided to do that just because it helps keep the dust down. Now here on the left-hand side, you see more steel components. In fact, maybe even columns now that have arrived and being stockpiled there. And then here you can see some of the materials have been removed and relocated to that east side. So this section here with materials is clearing out a little bit. I'll pan the drone back to the north across the south lot so you can see a few things that are going on. One, quite a few more Model Ys have been produced, and they're using this former transport section to temporarily house the Model Ys. Also, you can see excavation work is continuing on the south end now and the southwest side, and you can see how it has expanded. Used to be a sort of a testing ground with rumble strips here for the Model Ys. You can still see them, but I think that's no longer being used because of the excavation work. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see a continued demolition of this concrete section, and it is actually growing towards the east. And as I mentioned before with the saw cuts, they cut them into these squares, and you see that they are using forklifts to pick them up, and then they're taking them like this for recycling rather than breaking up the concrete. And again, I think this helps keep down some of the dust. Now, some people have asked why they're doing this right next to these cars. I can't answer that for sure, but some of the cars, the ones that are closest to that excavation, have been here for a while, so they may be test cars and not necessarily for customers. As we approach the south end of the building, you can see some large equipment has just been moved inside the second floor on that loading ramp, and you can see more trucks here on the left-hand side, and there'll be another one on the right-hand side that's delivering more materials. As I've mentioned before, it's very difficult to see into the stamping extension structure, but I'm trying. And you can see more work on the ground slab on the left-hand door, and on the right-hand door, it looks like the isolation foundation, which is a concrete subterranean foundation that will basically be what holds up the AIDA stamping press that'll be used for the Cybertruck. That is almost completed, and now they're filling it back in with dirt. So we may see some of that equipment moved inside soon. We've just come up onto the body in white roof, and I want to show you some progress here with the HVAC ducts, as you see temporarily stored here in front of the drone, and also the section of roof that was removed, and they've added in some sort of bracing structure on top of the beams for the main roof. And you can see how they're also installing some of the HVAC ducting. You also see a small kind of a wall structure around the edge of the opening. I think that's going to go all the way around. It gives a bit of a raised section for the roof, and that may be just necessary for part of the installation of all of these ducting that we will see. And those ducts that we saw temporarily stored will continue to be added on here, and I think this entire section will have the ducts, as you see the 6 segments that have been installed here right now. I'll position the drone just a little bit more so you can see down inside, and underneath this section you can see some piping, and also there's some HVAC systems that are being installed or have been installed in that particular section. So let's take a pull back towards the east side, and let's take a look at some other activity that's going on in the east side of the body in white. Right here you can see in the middle of the picture there's 2 more receiving docks that are being created. These are being cut into the walls, and then they build the concrete apron in front of them. And these all add to that capacity of the main building. Now relocated over towards the east side, and you can see the warehouse on wheels on the left hand side with all of the trailers. You can see quite a bit of the materials, trailers, workshops, some vehicles that have been moved to this new southeast section, and it continues to grow. I'm also going to get a little bit closer to this new structure on the bottom of the screen, and I'll bring the drone down a little bit. This is a workshop, and they use roof over some of the trailers. Also, you can see some very large steel components. These are also columns that have been stockpiled here, and the amount of stockpile steel here continues to grow daily. I'm still monitoring to find out what they're going to be using it for. You can see the clearing that we talked about in my previous video. It was having earthwork then. Now it has the gravel mix, and it looks like they're preparing to extend the fence around this section, and that will further increase the size of the warehouse on wheels yard. So let's position over towards the battery cathode plant, where we see quite a bit of activity today. On the west side, a large clearing continues to be prepared. This may be for either parking or material storage, or a little bit of both. You can see the number of wall panels that has been installed. It just continues to move at a rapid pace, and almost all of the wall panels on the south end have been installed, except for that one open area. As we continue to fly north along the west side, I'll bring the drone down a little bit more so you can see the work that's going on for this concrete apron. They've got rebar. You can kind of see two sections of rebar. The one in the middle shows that it's more heavily reinforced, so something heavy may be installed here. In the building itself, you see the studs for the walls, the wall panels, a lot of the HVAC ducting, and more piping that have been installed, so quite a bit of effort here. Also looking where the manifold is with the concrete vaults, the area where the workers are shows these small excavations, these squares. This suggests that there's going to be some footings put in here, probably to mount tanks. We're passing the two temporary loading platforms, and they're using those extensively to bring in more materials for construction. And overall, you can see the interior of the building is really being fitted out quite a bit. I noticed that there's some new activity and developments up to this far northeast side. Not only do we see some of these trailers and workshops and some equipment now, we are beginning to see some of the steel components just going onto the bottom of the drone, and a section that has been walled off with that black netting around the fences. And we'll come back and take a closer look at that in a second. But you can also see continued excavation work at the far north end of this particular section. And at the top of the screen, you can see that equipment rental lot that I gave you a closer look at on my previous video. But that's all to support the activities that are going on in this clearing. You can also see as we turn back towards the battery cathode plant just how this entire section continues to transform, and the overall grade continues to have work, kind of suggesting that there will be construction at some point here. As promised, we're back to take a look at the kind of the black fenced off section here. It's a little bit bigger than a silt fence, but so I think that this may be for them to have equipment stored here, at least temporarily. We see a large section here with the workers and the concrete pump truck filling this up with concrete. I'm not sure what this structure will be, but it may be a small steel structure, maybe a control room, or maybe offices. It'll be something to watch to see what they end up putting in. The entire east side has just grown with the amount of equipment and materials that have been stored here. On the north end, on the ground level, you see crews working on the perimeter grade beam with those yellow forms. Also looks like they're preparing for what will eventually be loading docks on this side of the building. As I bring the drone down a little bit more, you can see on the ground floor another large section of ground slab is being prepared. It has that yellow moisture barrier, and they're putting in some of the rebar ahead of the concrete. Also, in this entire middle section, we see the yellow moisture barrier pretty much in the entire section of the floor added. And we also see the three deep foundations now have not only rebar, but it looks like portions of it have had concrete poured. I think this is actual concrete, not just a mud base, based on the depth of what we see with the concrete here. But whatever is being added into this section, whatever the equipment will be, looks like it's going to be extremely heavy, and it needs these deep foundations. As we continue further to the south, you can see the number of wall panels on this side of the building just continue to grow. It's now reached about the midsection of the building. More panels are on the ground ready for installation as well, and rapidly the building is getting closed off. Just ahead of the drone, we can see this large trench. This is where they are installing that blue water pipe. And it looks like it's going the length of this side of the building, and it looks like it may connect on the south end, and then we'll have to see where that goes later on. I thought I would give a closer and more detailed view of this structure. We've been monitoring its development over the last several videos. You can see concrete has been poured on the south side. There's that metal structure, kind of like almost like a carport, has been put up there, and this just gives you an overall view of how this section looks. I don't know exactly what this is going to be, but it has quite a few cooling towers installed into the trailers. So let's position back over towards the electrical substation and check out some significant progress over there. Just on the south end of where the construction site is for the electrical substation, this clearing continues to see work to level it out. And again, I'm not sure if it's material storage or a parking lot, but I'll continue to monitor that. As we fly over the temporary electrical substation, you can see the main site shows quite a bit of progress today. Not only are there steel components, as you can see on the bottom right-hand side, you can also see some of the work on these two rectangular excavations. Looks like they're preparing to begin some future work here with some of the steel parts that have been delivered right next to them. Also, as we continue towards the area where they had the footings installed, you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, it looks like these are more mounts to be put into bores, put with concrete, and then hold up some large poles. So I'll continue to monitor that. Here you can see all of these square footings that have been constructed. Now they drilled a bore, they put the rebar cages down inside, and then they put the frames and forms around. As you can see, a few of them here, poured the concrete, and now today they are actually installing some of the poles. Now these poles that you see being installed will eventually hold up some of the electrical components for the main electrical substation. So again, a lot of progress here, more form work in these excavations prepare for concrete. This is where the crews are building the rebar cages. Looks like one of the crew saw the drone, and these are what are installed down into the deep bores and then filled with concrete. This north end continues to be cleared out. It looks like just preparation for some future work at some point. You can also see some of the drainage grates here next to those cones, some more of the materials and the cages and the steel poles ready for installation. Quite a bit of materials have been delivered near where the drill is, and the drill itself has relocated further to the east and is beginning another large section of bores that will support more of these footings. And you can see how the footings, some of them have already been poured with concrete, while others near the drill are being prepared with the formwork for the concrete. And it just continues to see more and more of this footing section expand. I'm going to move over towards the steel structure. This will be the control house. And because of the lighting, I'm going to give you a view of not only the control house, but also in the background where the battery cathode plant is, so you can get a reference to where these are located and where they are in reference to each other. Looking down inside, you can see that there's several rooms or segments within the structure that have been well defined, and it looks like pretty soon we're going to see the roof installed, and then that'll be the last that we can see with the development inside. I'm also showing you the sort of the water outfall channel. This has been poured with concrete. You can see those blocks in the middle. Those are to just basically manage the flow of the water into the pipe. There's a very similar one on the north end of that water detention pond. So you can see some more of the components here, some of the stormwater pipe and just the other activity near the very busy electrical substation construction site today. Arriving at the north end of the building, I'll give you some views of this plumbing work that is still underway. It looks like they've already poured the walkway or the sidewalk, and they are preparing to fill in some more of the trenches, at least on this side. There's a surveyor as well, making sure that everything is as designed, or at least as intended. And you can see on this side of the construction site, they're putting in some formwork for some more concrete pours. In front of the paint shop, we see more and different kinds of components have been delivered, and those are in the clear plastic. We also see a Model Y basic body painted in white inside the door. I'm not sure what this is doing here, but it shows you the kind of the platform that they use to both move and do some of the painting work of the cars. So just another interesting tidbit to see. You can also see some more of the green wrapped components, which is part of the modular paint system. And we also see here in front of the plastics manufacturing these 5 kind of trailers. These are actually used to recover water and contaminants. So I'm not sure why they are using it in this particular section right now. The 2 platforms for the 4680 construction and production site are kind of busy again today with more equipment being moved up, and you can see this green truck just delivered more equipment. The HVAC ducting and enclosures for the cooling towers continue to see some work here. They're working on the enclosures on the left hand side of the screen. You can see there's 2 remaining for being completed. They have all the materials there, but they're still kind of moving at kind of a relaxed pace when installing these enclosures. Let's prepare the drone to go across the highway again, and let's see what is going on with the material storage lot here on the west side of the highway. Now this has had a lot of materials stored here over the last couple of years. It continues to change. Right now on the left-hand side, it looks to me that these are old beams that were installed at one point in time, have been removed, and are now being stored over here. I base the fact that they have been painted in white as part of that. And I don't know, but it may be part of that reconfiguration inside the General Assembly on the southwest side. This section here is continuing to grow with a lot of steel beams and columns, and what I think this may be for is inside the 4680 battery structure, sort of on the eastern side of it, just on the ground floor and the second floor where the loading platforms are. Inside there is still under construction, and I think based on the proximity of these components and what is needed inside there, is that they may be using these components to finish construction inside the sort of the eastern half of the 4680 production part of the building. You can see that in the actual building itself on that angled corner on the northwest corner. But anyway, something more to continue to monitor. So I hope that you enjoyed the information about the renders and what we can expect in the future, the gorgeous sunrise, and all the information that we presented and talked about in the video. Have a great weekend.